The rain hammered against the windows of Sarah Chen's private jet as it descended through the clouds over Seattle. After 2 weeks of intense negotiations in Tokyo, the tech entrepreneur was exhausted but triumphant. Her company, Quantum Solutions, had just secured a partnership worth $500 million. Sarah stretched in her leather seat, scrolling through her phone. 32 years old, and she'd already built one of the fastest-growing software companies in North America. The media called her a genius. Forbes put her on their cover. But tonight, all she wanted was to collapse into bed beside her husband, Mark. The landing was smooth despite the storm. As her car pulled through the iron gates of her Mercer Island estate, something felt wrong. The house was blazing with lights despite the late hour. Her mother's small sedan sat at an odd angle near the fountain, as if hastily parked. "Wait here," Sarah told her driver, stepping out into the downpour. That's when she heard it. A woman's cry, sharp and desperate, cutting through the sound of rain. Sarah's blood ran cold. She knew that voice. It belonged to her mother. She ran toward the sound, her designer heels splashing through puddles. Near the service entrance, she found a sight that would haunt her forever. Her mother, Linda Chen, crumpled on the wet pavement, clutching a small suitcase. The elderly woman's clothes were soaked through, her silver hair plastered to her face. "Mom!" Sarah dropped to her knees, pulling off her coat to wrap around her mother's shaking shoulders. "What happened? Why are you out here?" Linda looked up, her eyes filled with tears and rain. "Sarah, I tried to stop him. I told him those papers weren't legal. He said I was in the way." Who did this to you?" But Sarah already knew. Her eyes lifted to the house, to the warm glow of the living room windows where she could see a silhouette. Mark. Her husband of 3 years. The man she'd trusted with everything. Linda gripped her daughter's arm weakly. "He wants the company, Sarah. He tried to make me sign documents transferring your shares to him. When I refused, he threw me out like garbage." Sarah's hands trembled as she helped her mother stand. The woman who had worked 3 jobs to put her through MIT, who had believed in her when no one else did, now stood before her broken and humiliated. "Can you walk, Mom?" "I think so." Sarah supported her mother toward the car, signaling her driver. But before leaving, she turned back to the mansion one final time. Through the rain-streaked windows, she saw Mark pour himself a drink, completely unbothered by the storm, by her mother, by anything except his own comfort. Something inside Sarah shifted in that moment. The love she'd felt for 3 years evaporated like steam, replaced by something harder, colder, and far more dangerous. "Take my mother to Swedish Medical Center," she instructed her driver. "Private suite. Tell them I'll be there within the hour." "And you, ma'am?" Sarah's jaw tightened as she stared at the house. "I'm going to have a conversation with my husband." As the car pulled away with her mother safely inside, Sarah walked back through the rain. Each step was deliberate, measured. She wasn't the frightened girl who had once struggled to pay rent. She wasn't the naive woman who'd fallen for a charming smile and smooth words. She was Sarah Chen, CEO of a billion-dollar company. And someone was about to learn exactly what that meant. The front door wasn't locked. She pushed it open, water dripping from her hair and clothes onto the Italian marble floor. The house was silent except for the soft clink of ice in a glass. She found Mark in the living room, lounging on the white sofa she'd imported from Milan. He looked up, startled. "Sarah, you're back early. I thought. Where is she?" Sarah's voice was quiet, deadly calm. "Who?" "Don't play games with me, Mark." "My mother." "Where did you put her things?" Mark's expression shifted, calculating. He set down his drink and stood, arranging his features into concern. "Oh, Linda. Look, there was a misunderstanding. She was upset about some business decisions and—" "Stop." Sarah held up her hand. "I found her outside, in the rain, crying, with a suitcase." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Mark's facade cracked, revealing something cold beneath. Fine. You want the truth? Your mother is a stubborn old woman who doesn't understand modern business. I needed those share transfer papers signed, and she refused. She was causing problems, Sarah. I did what needed to be done. Sarah stared at the man she'd married, seeing him clearly for the first time. You threw my mother out of our home. The woman who raised me. The woman who sacrificed everything for my success. Our home. Let's be honest, Sarah. This is your home. Everything here is yours. I'm just the husband of the famous CEO, aren't I? Well, not anymore. Those papers will make me an equal partner. It's time I got what I deserve. Sarah felt the last fragment of her heartbreak. But her voice remained steady. You're right about one thing, Mark. You're going to get exactly what you deserve. She turned and walked toward the stairs, leaving wet footprints across the floor. Where are you going? Mark called after her. Sarah paused, looking back over her shoulder. To change clothes. And then to make some calls. You should probably call a lawyer, Mark. You're going to need one. Want to know what Sarah does next? Don't miss where she uncovers the shocking truth about Mark's plans. Like this video if you're Team Sarah, subscribe for the next chapter, and comment below where you're watching from. Have you ever had someone betray your trust? Share your story in the comments. Sarah stood in her walk-in closet, peeling off her wet clothes with mechanical precision. Her hands were steady now, her mind crystal clear. Shock had given way to calculation. This was just another problem to solve, another challenge to overcome. She changed into dry jeans and a sweater, then walked to her home office, the one room in the house that Mark never entered. It was her sanctuary, filled with monitors, servers, and the latest technology. More importantly, it contained something Mark didn't know about, a comprehensive security system that recorded everything. 6 months ago, during a routine security upgrade, Sarah had implemented cameras throughout the estate. Mark had complained about privacy, so she'd agreed to keep them hidden and limited to common areas. He'd never asked about the server logs or how long recordings were stored. That oversight was about to cost him everything. Sarah pulled up the security interface and began scrolling backward through the day's footage. The system was sophisticated, with facial recognition and motion detection. She found her mother's arrival at 2 p.m., Linda looking nervous as she rang the doorbell. Mark had answered, his smile cold even in the silent footage. He'd let her in, and they'd walked to his office. Sarah's office, technically, the one he'd commandeered shortly after their marriage. She switched to the office camera and turned up the audio. Linda, I'm glad you came. Mark's voice was smooth, practiced. As I explained on the phone, Sarah and I have been discussing restructuring quantum solutions. For tax purposes, it makes sense to transfer some shares into my name. Sarah didn't mention this to me. Linda's voice was uncertain. She's been busy with the Tokyo deal. But trust me, this is what she wants. I just need your signature here as the secondary shareholder. Sarah's breath caught. She'd given her mother 5% of the company years ago, a gesture of gratitude. Those shares weren't worth much in terms of control, but they were worth millions in value. I don't understand, Linda said in the recording. Why would Sarah want me to sign my shares to you? Because we're married, Linda. What's hers is mine. Don't you want your daughter's marriage to be strong? There was a pause. Then Linda's voice firmer. Let me call Sarah first. She's in meetings. She can't be disturbed. Mark's tone had shifted, losing its warmth. Linda, I'm trying to be patient here. Sign the papers. No. Not until I talk to my daughter. The video showed Mark's face darkening. He stood abruptly, looming over the elderly woman. You're making a mistake, old woman. Sarah trusts me. She chose me. Not you. I raised her to be smart, Linda said quietly. And smart people don't sign away their assets without reading every word. What happened next made Sarah's hands clench into fists. Mark grabbed the papers and threw them across the room. Fine. You want to be difficult? Get out. Get out of this house. Sarah doesn't need you anyway. All you do is remind her of being poor. Mark, please. I said get out. His voice had risen to a shout. He'd grabbed Linda's arm and pulled her toward the door. The footage switched to the hallway camera. Linda, frightened now, had tried to gather her purse and coat, but Mark had pushed her toward the exit. You're not welcome here anymore. If you come back, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. This is my daughter's house. And I'm her husband. Which means what I say goes. The final camera showed Linda being pushed out the service door into the rain, her small suitcase thrown after her. Mark had stood in the doorway for a moment, then slammed the door shut. Sarah saved all the files to 3 separate encrypted drives. Her hands moved quickly across the keyboard, her mind already 10 steps ahead. But alongside the cold fury was something else. Guilt. She'd been so focused on building her empire that she'd missed the signs. How long had Mark been showing his true nature? How many other things had she failed to notice? A knock on the office door startled her. Sarah. Mark's voice was cautious. Can we talk? She minimized the security footage and turned. Come in. He entered, his expression carefully arranged into remorse. He'd changed tactics, she realized. Now he would try charm, apology, manipulation. Look, I overreacted today, he began. Your mother was being stubborn about some paperwork, and I lost my temper. You know how stressed I've been about the company finances. The company finances are fine, Mark. We're more profitable than ever. Well, yes, but... Look, the point is, I'm sorry. I'll apologize to Linda tomorrow. We can all sit down and... Mark, how much debt are you in? He blinked, thrown by the sudden question. What? It's a simple question. How much money do you owe? I don't. Sarah, where is this coming from? She pulled up a spreadsheet on her screen. 2 weeks ago, I had our accountant run a routine check on all household accounts. Did you know that triggers a flag on any accounts with your name attached? His face paled slightly. You had me investigated? No. I had our joint finances reviewed. Standard practice. But I found something interesting. You have 3 credit cards I don't know about. Maxed out. You have a loan from a private lender in Vegas. And you have a gambling account with a casino that shows losses of over $200,000 in the past year. Mark's mouth opened and closed. For once, he had no smooth reply. Here's what's going to happen, Sarah continued, her voice calm and measured. You're going to pack a bag and leave this house tonight. Tomorrow, my lawyers will file for divorce and a restraining order based on your treatment of my mother. The prenuptial agreement you signed makes this very simple. Sarah, please. I'm not finished. She stood, facing him directly. You will not contest the divorce. You will not speak to the media. You will not contact my mother ever again. If you do any of these things, I will release the security footage of you assaulting an elderly woman. Your reputation will be destroyed, and I will press criminal charges. You can't do this. Yes, Mark. I can. Because unlike you, I actually built something. I have power not because I married it, but because I earned it. She walked past him to the door, holding it open. You have 1 hour to pack. Security will escort you from the property. Your credit cards will be cancelled. Your access to all accounts will be terminated. And Mark. He looked at her, his face a mixture of rage and disbelief. If you ever come near my mother again, if you even think about threatening her, you won't have to worry about courts or lawyers. You'll have to worry about me. And I promise you, I'm far more dangerous than you ever imagined. The Seattle skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sarah's downtown office. It was 6 a.m., and she'd barely slept. After ensuring her mother was comfortable at the hospital, Just exhaustion and mild hypothermia, thank God. Sarah had spent the night preparing for war. Her phone buzzed. Elena Rodriguez, her chief legal officer and best friend since college, appeared on the video call looking concerned. I got your message. All of it. Sarah, are you okay? I'm fine. Did you review the footage? Every second. It's damning. But Sarah, there's something you need to know. Mark filed first. Sarah's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. What? 2 hours ago. He filed for divorce and he's claiming emotional abuse, alienation of affection, and... Elena hesitated. He's asking for half of Quantum Solutions under Washington's community property laws. For a moment, Sarah couldn't breathe. The prenup. He's claiming it was signed under duress. That you threatened to end the engagement if he didn't sign. That he was pressured and didn't have proper legal representation. Sarah set down her coffee carefully, her mind racing. That's a lie. He had his own lawyer. I have the documentation. I know. But he's playing dirty, Sarah. There's more. He's given an interview to the Seattle Times. It's scheduled to run tomorrow morning. In it, he claims you're a workaholic who neglected your marriage, that you were controlling and emotionally distant, and that you turned your mother against him. He threw her out in the rain. Elena. I know. But he's spinning it as a misunderstanding. He's playing the victim card, the husband who tried to support his powerful wife, only to be cast aside when he asked for basic respect. Sarah stood and walked to the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Below, the city was waking up. People heading to work, living ordinary lives, unaware that somewhere in those streets, a man was trying to destroy everything she'd built. Set up a press conference, Sarah said quietly. For this afternoon. Sarah, are you sure? Maybe we should. This afternoon, Elena. And get me Mike Patterson from Channel 7 News. He's been fair to me in the past. What are you going to do? I'm going to tell the truth. All of it. After Elena hung up, Sarah made another call. This one to her mother at the hospital. Mom, how are you feeling? Linda's voice was tired but steady. Better, sweetheart. But worried about you. I heard about Mark's lawsuit. Don't worry about that. Mom, I need to ask you something. Are you willing to tell your story publicly? About what he did. There was a long pause. Sarah, I don't want to hurt your reputation. If people think you chose poorly. People make mistakes, Mom. But the difference between good people and bad people is what we do when we realize we've made those mistakes. Will you help me? Of course, baby. Whatever you need. The press conference was set for 3 p.m. at Quantum Solutions headquarters. By noon, news had spread that Sarah Chen would be making a statement about her pending divorce. Media vans lined up outside. Reporters speculated wildly on social media. Sarah spent the intervening hours working with her legal team, reviewing documents, and preparing her statement. She also made one more crucial call. James. It's Sarah Chen. Yes, it's been a while. I need a favor. Remember how you said you owed me after I testified in your case against Tech Corp? Well, I'm calling that in. James Whitmore was a forensic accountant, one of the best in the country. Sarah had helped him expose corporate fraud 3 years ago, and he'd promised to return the favor someday. I need you to trace every financial transaction my husband has made in the past 2 years. Everything. Bank accounts, credit cards, cash withdrawals, investments, all of it. And James. I need it fast. By tomorrow morning if possible. That's a tall order, Sarah. I know. But I also know you can do it. There's something he's hiding, James. Something big. I can feel it. At 2:45 p.m., Sarah walked into the press room. She wore a simple navy suit, no jewelry except her wedding ring, which she would remove during the conference. Her mother sat in the front row, still weak but determined. Elena stood nearby, ready to handle legal questions. The room fell silent as Sarah approached the podium. Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to make a brief statement, show you some evidence, and then answer questions. I ask that you hold all questions until the end. She took a breath, looking directly into the cameras. 3 days ago, I returned home from a business trip to find my mother lying in the rain outside my house. She had been physically removed from the property by my husband, Mark Davis, because she refused to sign documents that would have transferred her shares in my company to him. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Sarah continued. For the past year, my husband has been hiding significant gambling debts from me. He has borrowed money from private lenders. He has maxed out credit cards in his name. And when he could not find another way to access funds, he attempted to coerce my elderly mother into signing away her financial assets. She nodded to Elena, who started a projection on the screen behind her. The security footage played, showing everything. Mark's aggression. Linda's fear. The physical ejection into the rain. Several reporters gasped. Cameras flashed frantically. This morning, my husband filed for divorce and claimed I was emotionally abusive. That I was controlling. That I turned my mother against him. These are lies told by a man who tried to steal from my family and then discarded my mother like garbage when she stood in his way. Sarah removed her wedding ring and placed it on the podium. I will not be bullied. I will not be manipulated. And I will not allow anyone, including my soon-to-be ex-husband, to rewrite history to make themselves the victim when they are the abuser. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. My mother is a woman who worked 3 jobs to put me through college. She cleaned houses, waited tables, and took night shifts at a factory so I could have opportunities she never had. The idea that I would turn against her, or that she would lie about being mistreated, is absurd to anyone who knows our family. Linda stood shakily, and Sarah moved to support her. Mother and daughter faced the cameras together. I'm not sharing this to gain sympathy, Sarah continued. I'm sharing this because I know I'm not the only woman who's been manipulated by someone they trusted. I'm not the only person who's been gaslit into questioning their own reality. And I want everyone watching to know, you are not crazy. You are not overreacting. Trust your instincts. Protect yourself. And never let anyone convince you that loyalty means accepting abuse. The room erupted with questions. Sarah answered each one calmly, factually, with Elena jumping in on legal matters. The press conference lasted an hour. When it ended, Sarah's phone was flooded with messages. Supporters. Fellow CEOs sharing their own stories. Women thanking her for speaking out. But there was also one message that caught her attention. From James Whitmore. Sarah, I found something. You need to see this. It's bigger than gambling debts. Call me immediately. Sarah looked at her mother, at Elena, and felt a chill run down her spine. What else had Mark been hiding? James Whitmore's office was in a nondescript building in downtown Seattle, the kind of place that looked too ordinary to house one of the nation's top forensic accountants. Sarah arrived at 8 a.m., her mother resting safely at her penthouse with a private nurse, Elena handling the media storm still swirling from yesterday's press conference. James was already at his computer when Sarah entered, surrounded by multiple monitors displaying spreadsheets, bank statements, and transaction records. He looked like he hadn't slept. Sarah. Thanks for coming so quickly. He gestured to a chair. You're going to want to sit down for this. She sat, her stomach tight with anticipation. What did you find? James pulled up a document on the main screen. Let's start with the obvious. Your husband's gambling debts are real. About $340,000 across 3 casinos and 2 online platforms. But that's just the beginning. He clicked to another screen. Mark has been systematically moving money out of your joint accounts for 18 months. Small amounts at first, $2,000 here, $5,000 there. Nothing large enough to trigger automatic alerts. The money went into an account I traced to a shell corporation registered in Delaware called Apex Ventures LLC. Apex Ventures? I've never heard of it. You wouldn't have. It was created specifically to hide assets. But here's where it gets interesting. James brought up another document. Mark isn't the only person associated with Apex Ventures. There are 3 other names on the corporate filing. Sarah leaned forward, scanning the names. The first 2 she didn't recognize. But the third made her blood run cold. David Chen. That's my cousin. Your cousin who works at Quantum Solutions as Director of Business Development, James confirmed. The same cousin you promoted 6 months ago. Sarah's mind raced. David had been family. She'd trusted him, given him opportunities, brought him into her inner circle. What's his connection to Mark? They've been meeting regularly for over a year. Lunch meetings, golf games, drinks after work. Your husband has been paying for everything, or rather you have, since it was charged to joint accounts. James pulled up more documents. Now it gets worse. 3 months ago, someone accessed your company's financial system using your credentials. They didn't steal money directly from Quantum Solutions. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they reviewed proprietary information about upcoming projects, client lists, and expansion plans. Who? The access came from an IP address registered to your home. But the login times correspond to when you were confirmed to be elsewhere, business trips, off-site meetings. Someone who had access to your home and your passwords. Sarah felt sick. Mark. Most likely. But here's the real kicker. James opened what looked like an email exchange. I found encrypted communications between Mark and David discussing something called Project Takeover. These emails detail a plan to gradually undermine your position at Quantum Solutions. Sarah read the messages, each one worse than the last. Mark to David. Sarah's too focused on the Tokyo deal to notice the board members I'm cultivating. Jenkins and Thompson are on board. They're tired of taking orders from a woman half their age. David to Mark. Good. I've been planting seeds about her management style being too aggressive. A few more months and we can call for a vote of no confidence. Mark to David. Once she's out, we split control 50-50. The shares from her mother will give us enough leverage. After the divorce, I'll claim community property rights to another 30%. Combined with your shares and the board members we've turned, we'll have majority control. David to Mark. What about Linda? She's sharp. She might figure it out. Mark to David. Leave Linda to me. I'll handle that obstacle. Sarah's hands shook as she finished reading. They were planning to steal my company. My own cousin and my husband. That's not all. James pulled up bank records. 2 weeks ago, Mark opened an account in the Cayman Islands. He transferred $100,000 to it. Money that came from Apex Ventures. I believe he was preparing to disappear with your intellectual property and trade secrets. Can we prove this? In court? Absolutely. I have documentation, transaction records, emails, everything. But Sarah. James hesitated. If we go public with this, David will be implicated. He'll face criminal charges, wire fraud, corporate espionage, conspiracy. He's your family. Sarah stood and walked to the window. Below, people hurried along the sidewalk. Normal people with normal problems. She thought about family dinners with David, how she'd mentored him, trusted him. How her mother had always said, David is like a son to me. This would break her mother's heart. But the alternative was letting them get away with it. Gather everything, Sarah said quietly. Every document, every email, every transaction. We're filing criminal charges against both of them. Are you sure? Family doesn't steal from family, James. Whatever bond we had, they broke it. Not me. By noon, Sarah was back at Quantum Solutions headquarters. She called an emergency board meeting, not telling anyone the agenda. The board members filed in, looking curious and concerned. David was there, his expression carefully neutral. Sarah stood at the head of the table, Elena beside her with a laptop. Thank you all for coming on short notice. I'm going to share some information that affects the future of this company and several people in this room. She nodded to Elena, who projected the first email onto the screen. For the past 18 months, there has been a conspiracy to remove me as CEO and steal control of Quantum Solutions. The conspirators are my husband, Mark Davis, and my cousin, David Chen. David's face went white. Sarah, what are you? Sit down, David. Her voice was ice. You'll have your chance to explain to the FBI when they arrive. She walked through the evidence methodically. The secret accounts. The stolen data. The manipulated board members. The plan to claim community property in the divorce. Every detail laid bare. Several board members looked shocked. Others, Jenkins and Thompson, looked distinctly uncomfortable. Gentlemen, Sarah addressed them directly, if either of you has been approached about voting against me, now would be the time to disclose it. I'm prepared to offer immunity to anyone who cooperates with the investigation. Thompson cleared his throat. Mark. He suggested that the company might benefit from more experienced leadership. He said you were spread too thin, that the Tokyo deal was distracting you from core operations. He implied there might be a financial incentive if certain board members supported a leadership change. Did he offer you money? Not directly. But he suggested that after a restructuring, there might be opportunities for profit sharing. Sarah turned to David, who sat frozen in his chair. Anything you want to say, cousin? Sarah, you don't understand. Mark said you were planning to sell the company. That we'd all lose our jobs. He convinced me that we needed to act first to protect everyone's interests. So you decided to steal from me? To help him rob my mother? To plot behind my back for 1.5 years? David's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. He got in my head. He made it sound reasonable, like we were saving the company, not stealing it. You're a 35-year-old man, David. Not a child. You knew exactly what you were doing. The conference room door opened. 2 FBI agents entered, badges displayed. David Chen? The lead agent asked. David looked at Sarah one last time, pleading. She turned away. Yes, that's me. You're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy to commit corporate espionage, and theft. Please stand and put your hands behind your back. As they cuffed David, Sarah addressed the remaining board members. I'm disappointed that some of you were willing to entertain Mark's proposals. However, I believe in second chances for those who admit their mistakes. Thompson, Jenkins, you're on probation. One more incident and you're out. What about Mark? Someone asked. Mark Davis will be arrested this afternoon on multiple charges. The divorce proceeds with the prenuptial agreement fully intact. He gets nothing. After the meeting ended, Sarah sat alone in the conference room. Elena entered quietly, sitting beside her. That was the hardest thing you've ever had to do, wasn't it? Sarah nodded, tears finally coming. He was family, Elena. My mom loved him like a son. Your mom will understand. She's stronger than you think. I know. But it still hurts. Elena squeezed her hand. That's because you're human, Sarah. That's because you still have a heart, unlike them. Don't ever apologize for that. Sarah wiped her eyes and stood. Come on. We have a company to protect and a mother to take care of. The rest will sort itself out in court. As they left, Sarah took one last look at the boardroom where she'd just dismantled a conspiracy against her. She'd won this battle, but the war wasn't over. Mark was still out there. And cornered animals were always the most dangerous. The story exploded overnight. By dawn, every major news outlet in the country was running the headline, Tech CEO exposes husband and cousin's plot to steal company. Sarah's press conference footage went viral, accumulating millions of views within hours. Sarah sat in her penthouse, watching the sunrise over Puget Sound, her mother sleeping peacefully in the guest room. Her phone buzzed constantly, interview requests, support messages, and unfortunately, death threats from Mark's supporters who believed his version of events. "You should eat something," Elena said, arriving with coffee and bagels from Sarah's favorite bakery. "You've lost 5 pounds in the past week." "I'm fine." "No, you're not. But that's okay. Nobody expects you to be fine right now." Sarah accepted the coffee gratefully. "Have you seen the news?" "All of it." The response is mostly positive. People are calling you brave. But there's also a counter-narrative forming. Mark gave another interview last night. Sarah groaned. "To whom?" "National morning show. He's playing the destroyed husband angle. Crying on camera, saying you're using your wealth and power to destroy him because he dared to ask for equality in the marriage." "That's absurd." "Of course it is. But it's effective." His interview has 10 million views. People are divided. Half think you're a hero for exposing corruption. Half think you're a vindictive wife who's weaponizing the legal system. Sarah set down her coffee, suddenly losing her appetite. "What does our PR team suggest?" "They say do nothing. Let the facts speak for themselves. The criminal charges, the evidence, the trial, all of it will vindicate you eventually." Eventually isn't good enough. Mark is poisoning public opinion right now. If potential clients and partners start believing I'm some kind of ruthless destroyer of families, it could hurt Quantum Solutions. "So what do you want to do?" Sarah thought for a moment. "I want to tell my story. The whole story. Not just the facts, but the emotions. I want people to understand what it feels like to be betrayed by the person you trusted most." "You mean like an in-depth interview?" "Exactly. Get me Diane Morrison from Pacific Northwest magazine. She's fair, thorough, and she has credibility. I'll give her exclusive access. My childhood, my mother's sacrifices, how I built Quantum, meeting Mark, everything." Elena looked skeptical. "Sarah, that's risky. It means opening yourself up completely. Every detail of your life will be scrutinized." "I know. But I'm tired of letting Mark control the narrative. It's time people saw the real story." The interview was scheduled for 3 days later, giving Sarah time to prepare. But Mark wasn't idle. On day 2, he released a statement through his lawyer claiming Sarah had brainwashed her mother against him. "Linda Chan is a victim of elder abuse," Mark's lawyer announced at a press conference. "Sarah Chan has manipulated her elderly mother into supporting false allegations. We have evidence that Linda suffers from early-stage dementia and cannot be considered a reliable witness." Sarah was in the car with Elena when she heard this. "He did not just accuse my mother of dementia. He absolutely did. And he's filed a motion to have her testimony excluded from any criminal proceedings." "On what basis?" "Diminished mental capacity." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "My mother is sharper than most people half her age. This is insane. It's also strategic. If he can discredit your mother, the security footage becomes less damning. He can claim she was confused, that he was trying to help her, that you misunderstood the situation." Sarah pulled out her phone. "Get me Dr. Elizabeth Park at Swedish Medical. The neurologist who examined my mom. I want a full cognitive assessment done today, documented and certified." "Mark wants to play doctor? Fine. Let's get actual medical professionals involved." By that afternoon, Linda Chan had undergone a comprehensive neurological examination. Dr. Park's report was unequivocal. Patient shows no signs of dementia, cognitive impairment, or diminished mental capacity. She scored 30 out of 30 on the mini mental state examination and demonstrated excellent recall, reasoning, and judgment. Sarah released the medical report to the media immediately. The response was swift and brutal. For Mark, Social media erupted with condemnation. He's so desperate he's attacking an elderly woman's mental health. This man has no shame. Absolutely disgusting. Every time I think Mark Davis can't go lower, he proves me wrong. But Mark doubled down. That evening, he appeared on a popular podcast known for its controversial takes. "Look, I loved Sarah," Mark said, his voice heavy with false emotion. "I still do. But she's changed. Power changed her. She became obsessed with control, with being the smartest person in every room. When I tried to be an equal partner, she saw it as a threat." The podcast host leaned forward. "What about the gambling debts?" "I had a problem. I admit that. But instead of helping me, Sarah used it against me. She could have gotten me into treatment. Instead, she's trying to destroy my life." "And the security footage of you pushing Linda Chen out of the house?" Mark's expression hardened. "That footage was edited. Taken out of context. Linda and I had a disagreement about business matters. I asked her to leave, politely, and she chose to make a scene. The rain, the dramatics, all of it was staged to make me look like a monster." Sarah watched this interview with her mother and Elena. Linda's hands trembled with anger. "That man is a liar," Linda said quietly. "Every word out of his mouth is a lie." "I know, Mom. What are we going to do?" Sarah looked at her mother, at the woman who had sacrificed everything, and made a decision. "We're going to fight back. With the truth." The next morning, Sarah arrived at Pacific Northwest Magazine's offices for her interview with Diane Morrison. The journalist was in her 50s, with kind eyes but a reputation for asking tough questions. "Thank you for doing this, Sarah," Diane said as they settled into comfortable chairs in a private studio. "I want you to know, this will be thorough. I won't softball anything." "I wouldn't want you to." The interview lasted 4 hours. Diane asked about everything. Sarah's childhood in a cramped apartment where cockroaches outnumbered furniture, her mother working 3 jobs, the scholarship to MIT that changed her life. She asked about building quantum solutions in a garage, the early failures, the breakthrough that made her wealthy. And then came the hard questions. "When did you first meet Mark?" "At a tech conference in San Francisco. 4 years ago. He was charming, funny, seemed genuinely interested in my work. Not just my money, but my ideas." "When did that change?" Sarah paused, thinking back. "Gradually. After we got married, he started making suggestions about the business. At first, they seemed helpful. But then he began questioning my decisions, undermining me in front of colleagues. I thought it was insecurity about being Mr. Sarah Chen. I tried to be supportive." "When did you realize it was more than insecurity?" "When I found my mother in the rain." Sarah's voice broke slightly. That moment crystallized everything. All the little comments, the manipulation, the financial secrecy, it all made sense. He never loved me. He loved what I could give him. That must have been devastating. It was. It still is. But I'm also angry, Diane. I'm angry that I was so focused on being successful that I missed the signs. I'm angry that my mother suffered because of my poor judgment. And I'm angry that men like Mark can smile and lie and manipulate, and people believe them because they're charming. Do you think gender plays a role in how you're being perceived? Absolutely. If I were a male CEO exposing a wife who tried to steal his company, I'd be celebrated as tough and decisive. But because I'm a woman, I'm vindictive or emotional, or unable to separate business from personal feelings. The double standard is exhausting. What about your cousin David? That betrayal must hurt differently. Sarah nodded, tears forming. David was family. My mother treated him like a son. I gave him opportunities, trusted him completely. His betrayal feels even worse than Mark's in some ways because we shared blood, history, childhood memories. He knew what my mother sacrificed for our family. And he still chose to participate in hurting her. Have you spoken to him since his arrest? No. He's tried to call, to write letters. I haven't responded. Do you think you ever will? I don't know. Part of me wants to understand why he did it. But another part of me knows that no explanation will ever be good enough. Diane leaned forward. Sarah, there are people who say you're being too harsh. That you could have handled this privately, that going public was about revenge, not justice. What do you say to them? Sarah met her gaze steadily. I say that secrets protect abusers. Silence enables bad behavior. If I had handled this privately, Mark and David would have faced no real consequences. They'd have moved on to their next victims. By going public, I'm showing other women, other people, that it's okay to fight back. That having money and power doesn't mean you have to accept betrayal quietly. Even if it costs you relationships, reputation, even then. Because what's the alternative? Pretending everything is fine? Letting them rewrite history? I refuse. I absolutely refuse. The interview ended with Diane asking one final question. What do you want people to understand about you, Sarah? Sarah thought carefully. I want them to know that I'm not perfect. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. I was so focused on success that I nearly lost sight of what matters. Family, integrity, protecting the people you love. But when I realized my mistakes, I didn't hide from them. I confronted them. And I think that's what defines character. Not the mistakes you make, but how you respond when those mistakes threaten to destroy everything you've built. The interview would be published the following week, but excerpts were released immediately. The response was overwhelming. Hashtag Team Sarah began trending on social media. Other women, and men, began sharing their own stories of betrayal and manipulation. But Mark wasn't finished. That evening, Sarah received a call from her head of security. Ms. Chin, we have a situation. Someone just tried to hack into the company servers. They were attempting to delete files related to Project Takeover. Sarah's blood ran cold. Did they succeed? No. We stopped them. But Ms. Chen, the IP address, it traces back to David Chen's last known location. He's out on bail. Yes. And apparently trying to destroy evidence. Sarah hung up and immediately called the FBI agent handling the case. Within an hour, David's bail was revoked and he was back in custody. But the hacking attempt had revealed something else. There was still someone on the inside helping them. Someone with access to quantum systems who hadn't been caught yet. Sarah gathered her core team, Elena, her CTO Marcus Williams, and her head of security James Park. We have a mole, Sarah said simply. Someone in this company is still working with Mark or David. We need to find them before they do any more damage. Marcus pulled up security logs. I can track every access point, every login, every file that's been touched in the past month. Do it. I want 24/7 monitoring. And Marcus, tell no one what we're doing. If word gets out that we're investigating, the mole will go dark. Over the next 48 hours, Marcus worked quietly, analyzing patterns. Sarah maintained her normal routine, meetings, press appearances, visits with her mother. But underneath, she was watching, waiting. Finally, Marcus called her into a secure room. I found something. For the past 3 weeks, someone has been accessing your private files during off hours. They're using legitimate credentials, but the access pattern is suspicious. They're looking at financial records, client lists, and strategic plans. Who? Marcus pulled up a profile. Sarah's heart sank. Jennifer Wu. Her executive assistant of 2 years. The woman who organized her schedule, screened her calls, and had access to virtually everything. Are you sure? Positive. She's been forwarding documents to an external email address. That email belongs to a burner account, but I traced it through proxy servers. The account has been communicating with Mark Davis. Sarah sat down heavily. Jennifer. God, I gave her a promotion 6 months ago. A raise. I trusted her completely. Do you want me to call security? Sarah thought for a moment. No, not yet. I want to know what she's been sending and why. Can you monitor her without her knowing? Already doing it. Good. Let her think she's safe. Let's see what else we can learn. That night, Sarah lay awake in her penthouse, staring at the ceiling. How many more betrayals could she endure? How many more people in her life were secretly working against her? Her phone buzzed. A text from Elena. The magazine interview drops tomorrow morning. Brace yourself. This is going to change everything. Sarah closed her eyes. Tomorrow, the world would see her differently. More vulnerable, more human, but hopefully more understood. She just hoped she was strong enough to handle whatever. The Pacific Northwest magazine interview hit newsstands and digital platforms at 6 a.m. Within an hour, it was the top trending topic across all social media. Sarah's raw honesty, her admission of mistakes, her vulnerability about the betrayal, her fierce defense of her mother, resonated with millions. This is what real strength looks like. Finally, a CEO who acts like a human being. Every woman who's been gaslit needs to read this. But the interview also had an unexpected effect. It flushed out Mark's remaining supporters. Conservative commentators began attacking Sarah's emotional approach to business. Anonymous social media accounts flooded posts with accusations that she was playing the victim while destroying men's lives. Sarah watched it all from her office, her expression unreadable. Elena sat across from her. You okay? I'm fine. Let them talk. Words can't hurt me anymore. Only actions matter now. Speaking of actions, Marcus is ready. He's set up the monitoring system for Jennifer. We'll know everything she does from now on. As if on cue, Marcus entered with his laptop. Ladies, we have movement. Jennifer just accessed your calendar for the next 2 weeks and forwarded it to the burner email. What's on my calendar that's so interesting? Sarah asked. Marcus pulled up the schedule. Board meeting on Friday. Strategy session on Monday. And a private meeting with the Seattle Police Department on Wednesday about additional charges against Mark. Sarah's eyes narrowed. She's giving Mark my schedule so he can prepare countermoves. That's my assessment. All right. It's time to set the trap. Marcus, I need you to do something for me. Add a fake meeting to my calendar. Make it look urgent and confidential. What kind of meeting? Sarah smiled coldly. A meeting with my lawyers to discuss a secret investigation into offshore accounts. Make it look like we've discovered evidence that Mark has been hiding millions in the Cayman Islands. Money that would be subject to asset seizure. But we already know about those accounts, Elena said. Mark doesn't know we know. If Jennifer forwards this information, Mark will panic and try to move the money. The moment he does, we'll have him on even more charges. Marcus grinned. You're setting a honey trap. Exactly. And Marcus, make sure the meeting details mention that we have bank records proving the money came from embezzled Quantum Solutions funds. That should really make him sweat. Within an hour, the fake meeting appeared on Sarah's calendar with appropriately urgent language. Confidential. Emergency legal strategy session newly discovered offshore accounts. Potential criminal exposure for MD beyond current charges. They didn't have to wait long. Jennifer accessed the calendar at 11:30 a.m. and forwarded it immediately. Marcus tracked the email to Mark's burner account, then watched as Mark began frantically making calls. He's on the phone with someone in the Cayman Islands, Marcus reported, monitoring Mark's cell phone activity through legal surveillance authorized by the FBI. And, yes, he's accessing the offshore account right now. He's trying to transfer the funds to a different account. Perfect, Sarah said. Elena, alert the FBI. They need to freeze those accounts immediately and add money laundering to the charges. Elena made the call while Sarah watched Marcus's screens. Mark's desperation was palpable even through digital traces. He was trying to move $1.2 million from one offshore account to another, then to another, creating a paper trail that would destroy any remaining credibility he had. "The FBI is moving in," Elena announced. "They're going to arrest him within the hour." Sarah nodded, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. This man had been her husband. She'd loved him once. And now she was watching his final desperate moves before losing his freedom. "What about Jennifer?" Marcus asked. "Keep monitoring her. I want to know who else she's been talking to." For the next hour, Sarah tried to work on normal business tasks, but her mind kept drifting to Mark. Where was he? Did he know the FBI was coming? Was he planning to run? Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Ms. Chen? This is Agent Rodriguez with the FBI. We have a problem." Sarah's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? "Mark Davis isn't at his hotel. His rental car is gone. We think he's running." "Running where?" "We don't know. But we have alerts out at all airports, train stations, and border crossings. He won't get far." After the agent hung up, Sarah stared at her phone. Mark was desperate now, which made him dangerous. What would a desperate man do? Elena must have seen the worry on her face. "He won't come here, Sarah. Security is too tight. It's not me I'm worried about. Your mother is protected. She has round-the-clock security at your penthouse." "I know, but..." Sarah's phone rang again. This time it was the security guard stationed at her penthouse. "Ms. Chen, your mother insisted on going to the hospital. She wanted to volunteer at the children's ward like she does every Wednesday. I tried to convince her to stay, but..." "Which hospital?" "Seattle Children's. She's there now with one guard. Should I send backup?" "Yes. Immediately. And call me when you have eyes on her." Sarah grabbed her jacket. "I'm going to the hospital." "Sarah, wait." Elena began. "My mother is exposed. If Mark is desperate enough to run, he might be desperate enough to take a hostage. I'm not taking chances." The drive to Seattle Children's Hospital took 15 minutes that felt like hours. Sarah's security team arrived simultaneously, and they entered together, moving quickly through the colorful hallways filled with children's artwork. They found Linda in the pediatric ward, reading stories to a group of children who were undergoing cancer treatment. She looked up in surprise when Sarah entered. "Sweetheart, what are you doing here?" Sarah knelt beside her mother's wheelchair, trying to keep her voice calm. "Mom, we need to go. Mark is missing. The FBI thinks he might be running, and I don't want to take any chances with your safety." Linda's expression hardened. "That man has taken enough from us. I refuse to let him disrupt these children's story time." "Mom." Sarah Elizabeth Chen. Linda used the voice that had terrified Sarah as a teenager. "These babies are fighting for their lives. They look forward to Wednesday stories all week. I will not abandon them because your ex-husband is a coward." One of the children, a little girl with no hair and wise eyes, tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "Are you really the billionaire lady from TV?" Sarah smiled despite her worry. "I guess I am. My mommy says you're brave. She says you stood up to a bully." "Your mommy is very kind." The little girl considered this. "Mrs. Linda says the bravest thing is to keep helping people even when you're scared." "Are you scared?" Sarah looked at her mother, who was watching her with those knowing eyes. "Yes," Sarah admitted. "I'm very scared. But you're here anyway. That's what brave means." Linda squeezed Sarah's hand. "Why don't you stay and read with us? Your security team can watch the door. These children deserve to see that even billionaire CEOs make time for what matters." Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to bundle her mother into an armored car and lock her in the penthouse. But looking at the children's faces, hopeful, trusting, innocent, she realized her mother was right. "Okay," Sarah said softly. "I'll stay." For the next hour, Sarah read stories about dragons and princesses, about heroes who were afraid but acted anyway. The children laughed and asked questions and forgot, for a moment, that they were sick. It was during the third story that Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Agent Rodriguez. Davis apprehended at the Canadian border. In custody. Repeat. Threat neutralized. Sarah felt the tension drain from her shoulders. She looked at her mother, who was wiping tears from a little boy's cheeks, and thought about what bravery really meant. It wasn't about being fearless. It was about being terrified and showing up anyway. It was about protecting what mattered, whether that was a company, a mother, or a group of sick children who needed stories. After the reading session ended, Sarah wheeled her mother outside where additional security waited. "You were right to stay," Sarah admitted. "Those kids needed it." "And so did you," Linda said gently. "You've been so focused on fighting Mark that you forgot why you built Quantum Solutions in the first place. To make a difference. To help people. I just want to protect you, Mom." "I know, baby. But the best protection isn't walls and security guards. It's living a life so full of purpose that fear can't find room to grow." Back at the office, Sarah met with Marcus and Elena to discuss Jennifer. "She's accessed 6 more files since we set the trap," Marcus reported. "She's been forwarding information to Mark's account even after his arrest. I don't think she knows he's been caught." "What files?" "Client contracts, mostly. And something interesting, she accessed the sealed documents from your father's estate." Sarah frowned. "Why would Mark want those? They're just old business records from before he even knew me." "Unless there's something in there he thinks he can use," Elena suggested. Sarah pulled up the estate documents on her computer. Most of it was routine: property deeds, business licenses, tax records. But one document caught her eye: a letter from her father, written shortly before his death, addressed to her. "I never saw this," Sarah whispered, opening the file. The letter was handwritten, scanned into the digital archive. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, I am gone. There are things I need to tell you about Quantum Solutions, about our family, and about trust. When I built this company, I made a promise to use technology to help people, not just to make money. I established a secret fund, the Grace Initiative, that provides free software and training to underserved communities. This fund is hidden in the company's charitable foundation, accounting for 15% of annual profits. I never told anyone about this because I feared that future partners or investors might try to eliminate it to increase profits. The only person who knew was your mother. Guard this legacy, Sarah. Don't let anyone convince you that profit matters more than purpose. I love you more than words can express. Trust your instincts. They are good, Dad." Sarah's hands trembled as she finished reading. "The Grace Initiative. I never knew it existed. Why would Mark want this information?" Elena asked. Marcus pulled up more documents. "Because there's $50 million in that fund. If Mark could prove it was being mismanaged or wasn't properly authorized, he could have sued for misappropriation of company assets. He was building a case to claim you were stealing from your own company." "That's insane. But potentially effective. If he could create enough doubt about your management, paint you as someone who hid money from shareholders, he could have destroyed your reputation even from prison." Sarah stood and walked to the window. The Seattle skyline glittered in the afternoon sun. Her father had trusted her with a secret legacy of giving. And Mark had tried to weaponize that generosity against her. "I want to make the Grace Initiative public," Sarah said suddenly. "I want everyone to know what my father built. I want to expand it, double the funding, make it the centerpiece of Quantum Solutions." "Sarah," Elena said carefully, "that's a beautiful idea. But it will cost tens of millions." "I know. And it's worth every penny. My father understood something that Mark and David never will. Real wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the lives you touch, the people you help, the legacy you leave." She turned to Marcus. "As for Jennifer, it's time to end this. Have security bring her to my office. I want to talk to her face to face. Are you sure that's wise? Probably not. But I need to understand why she did it. I need to look her in the eye and ask. 20 minutes later, Jennifer Wu sat across from Sarah, her expression carefully neutral. She had no idea that they knew about her betrayal. Jennifer, thank you for coming, Sarah began. I wanted to talk to you about your future at Quantum Solutions. Of course, Ms. Chen. I'm always happy to discuss my career development. I'm sure you are. Tell me, Jennifer, how long have you been working with Mark? The color drained from Jennifer's face. I don't know what you're. Please don't insult my intelligence. We have every email you forwarded, every document you've accessed, every communication with Mark's burner account. I want to know why. I promoted you. I trusted you. What did he offer you that was worth betraying that trust? Jennifer's facade crumbled. Tears welled in her eyes. He said you were going to fire me. That you were bringing in someone new from the Tokyo office. He said if I helped him, he'd protect my job, give me a position in the new company structure after you were out. And you believed him? I was scared. I'm 45 years old, Ms. Chen. If I lose this job, who's going to hire me? I needed security. Sarah felt a pang of sympathy despite her anger. So you chose to hurt me to protect yourself? I didn't think anyone would really get hurt. I thought it was just business maneuvering. I didn't know about your mother, about the abuse. I swear if I'd known. You would have done the same thing, Sarah said quietly. Because you weren't thinking about what was right. You were thinking about what was safe. Jennifer sobbed openly now. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Sarah stood. Security will escort you out. You're fired, obviously. Whether we press charges depends on what the FBI decides. But Jennifer, the next time you're afraid of losing something, remember this moment. Remember that betrayal doesn't protect you. It destroys you. After Jennifer was escorted out, Sarah sat alone in her office, exhausted. In the past week, she'd exposed her husband, her cousin, and her assistant. She'd laid her entire life bare in a magazine interview. She'd set traps and prosecuted betrayers. And yet, somehow, she felt lighter than she had in years. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Dinner tonight? Just you and me. I'll make your favorite. Sarah smiled, tears pricking her eyes. I'll be there, Mom. I'll always be there. 3 months later, the King County Courthouse in downtown Seattle was surrounded by media vans, protesters, and curious onlookers. The trial of Mark Davis and David Chen had become the most watched legal proceeding in the Pacific Northwest, drawing comparisons to major celebrity cases. Sarah sat in the front row of the courtroom, her mother beside her in a wheelchair, both dressed in elegant but understated suits. Across the aisle, Mark sat with his legal team, 3 expensive lawyers who specialized in white-collar crime. David sat separately with a public defender, looking gaunt and broken. The prosecutor was Amanda Foster, a formidable woman in her 50s with a reputation for dismantling complex financial crimes. She'd spent months building an airtight case, and today was opening statements. Judge Margaret Thompson entered, and everyone rose. She was known for running a tight courtroom with zero tolerance for theatrics. Please be seated, Judge Thompson said, her voice carrying authority. We are here today in the matter of the state of Washington versus Mark Davis and David Chen. Ms. Foster, your opening statement. Amanda stood, buttoning her jacket. She walked to the jury, 6 men, 6 women, diverse in age and background, and made eye contact with each one. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about betrayal. Not the kind you see in movies, but the kind that happens in real life when people we trust decide that greed matters more than loyalty, more than family, more than basic human decency. She clicked a remote, and images appeared on the screen. Sarah and Mark's wedding photo, then photos of Quantum Solutions, then the security footage of Linda being pushed into the rain. The defendants, Mark Davis and David Chen, conspired for over 18 months to steal control of Quantum Solutions, a company worth over $2 billion. They manipulated, they lied, they forged documents, and when one person stood in their way, an elderly woman who dared to protect her daughter's legacy, Mr. Davis threw her out of her home into a storm. Mark's lawyer stood. Objection. Inflammatory language. Overruled, Judge Thompson said. Continue, Ms. Foster. The evidence will show that Mark Davis married Sarah Chen not out of love, but out of greed. He accumulated massive gambling debts and saw his wife's success as a solution to his problems. When Sarah refused to give him control of her company, he enlisted her cousin, David Chen, to help him steal it. Amanda walked to a display board showing the paper trail. They created shell corporations. They forged signatures. They manipulated board members. They attempted to coerce Linda Chen into signing away her shares. And when their plan began to unravel, they tried to destroy evidence. She turned back to the jury. This isn't just about money. It's about a man who saw his wife not as a partner, but as a target. It's about family members who violated sacred trust. And it's about holding powerful people accountable when they believe they're above the law. Amanda sat down. Mark's lead attorney, Gerald Hutchinson, stood immediately. He was a silver-haired man with a reputation for winning impossible cases. Members of the jury, my name is Gerald Hutchinson, and I represent Mark Davis. My client is not a monster. He's a man who made mistakes in a marriage that was already broken. Sarah felt her mother's hand squeeze hers. The prosecution wants you to believe this is a simple story of good versus evil. But the truth is far more complicated. Mark Davis loved Sarah Chen. He tried to be a supportive husband to one of the most powerful women in technology. But that power came with a price. Gerald walked toward the jury. Sarah Chen is brilliant, driven, and successful. She's also controlling, demanding, and emotionally unavailable. Mark tried to contribute to their partnership, to be more than just Mr. Sarah Chen. But every attempt was met with resistance, with suspicion, with accusations. Objection. Amanda stood. The victim is not on trial here. Sustained, Judge Thompson said. Mr. Hutchinson, focus on your client's actions, not character assassination. Of course, Your Honor. Gerald smiled slightly. The point is context. Yes, Mark had gambling debts. Yes, he made poor financial decisions. But he was trying to solve those problems himself, without burdening his wife. The documents he prepared regarding share transfers were exploratory, not criminal intent. And the incident with Mrs. Chen was a tragic misunderstanding, blown out of proportion by security footage that doesn't include audio context. He returned to his seat. We will show that Mark Davis is guilty of being a flawed husband, not a criminal mastermind. David's public defender, a young woman named Maria Santos, stood next. She looked nervous but determined. Your Honor, members of the jury, my client David Chen is guilty of one thing: being manipulated by a master manipulator. David trusted Mark Davis. He believed Mark's lies about Sarah planning to sell the company, about jobs being at risk. David made terrible choices, yes, but they came from a place of misguided loyalty, not criminal intent. The opening statements concluded, and Judge Thompson called for the first witness. Amanda Foster stood. The state calls Linda Chen to the stand. Sarah watched her mother wheel herself to the witness box with quiet dignity. The bailiff helped her get situated, and she was sworn in. Mrs. Chen, Amanda began gently, can you tell the jury about your relationship with your daughter Sarah? Linda's voice was soft but clear. Sarah is my only child. I raised her alone after her father died when she was 12. We struggled, but I worked hard to give her opportunities one never had. And what is your relationship with the defendant, Mark Davis? He was my son-in-law for 3 years. I welcomed him into our family. I thought he loved my daughter. Can you describe the events of March 15th of this year? Linda took a breath, and Sarah could see her mother's hands trembling slightly. Mark called me that morning. He said he needed to discuss some important business documents regarding Sarah's company. I went to the house around 2 p.m. What happened when you arrived? Mark showed me papers. He said Sarah wanted me to sign over my shares in Quantum Solutions to him. He said it was for tax purposes, for the good of the family. Did you believe him? No. Sarah tells me everything about business. She would have discussed this with me first. I told Mark I wanted to call Sarah before signing anything. How did he respond? Linda's voice hardened. He became angry. He said I was ungrateful, that I didn't understand modern business. He said Sarah didn't need me anymore, that I was just a burden from her past. Several jurors looked at Mark with visible distaste. What happened next, Mrs. Chen? He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the door. I tried to gather my things, but he was shouting that I needed to leave immediately. He pushed me out into the rain and threw my suitcase after me. Mrs. Chen, how did that make you feel? Objection. Gerald stood. Relevance. Your Honor, the emotional impact is relevant to understanding the severity of the defendant's actions, Amanda argued. I'll allow it. Please answer, Mrs. Chen. Linda's eyes filled with tears. I felt worthless. Like trash being thrown away. I'm 72 years old. I've worked my entire life. I sacrificed everything for my daughter. And this man treated me like I was nothing. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Linda's quiet crying. Sarah wanted to rush to her mother, but she forced herself to stay seated. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. No further questions. Gerald Hutchinson stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Chen, I'm sorry for your distress. I have just a few questions. Isn't it true that you've never liked Mark Davis? I liked him at first. He seemed to make Sarah happy. But over time, you encouraged Sarah to doubt him, didn't you? I encouraged Sarah to trust her instincts. You told her that Mark only wanted her money? I said she should be careful about who she trusted with her business. So you poisoned the relationship between your daughter and her husband? Objection. Amanda stood. Argumentative. Sustained. Gerald changed tactics. Mrs. Chen, you said Mark pushed you out of the house. But isn't it possible he was simply helping you to the door because you were upset? No. He pushed me. But you were emotional, possibly confused. At your age. I am not confused, Mr. Hutchinson. I know the difference between being helped and being assaulted. No further questions. As Linda wheeled back to her seat, Sarah embraced her mother quietly. You did great, Mom. Over the next 2 weeks, the prosecution built their case methodically. They presented the security footage, showing Mark's aggression clearly. They brought in James Whitmore, the forensic accountant, who walked the jury through the paper trail of fraud. These transactions were designed to be hidden, James testified. The shell corporations, the offshore accounts, the timing of transfers, all of it points to deliberate deception. They called Sarah to the stand on day 8. She'd been dreading this moment, but as she sat in the witness box, looking at the jury's faces, she felt strangely calm. Amanda asked her about building Quantum Solutions, about meeting Mark, about the slow erosion of trust in their marriage. Ms. Chen, Amanda said, when did you first realize your husband was stealing from you? When my accountant flagged unusual activity in our joint accounts. Small transfers I hadn't authorized. I initially thought it was a banking error. But when I investigated further, I found the pattern. How did that make you feel? Betrayed. Foolish. Angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. Why didn't you confront him immediately? I wanted to gather evidence first. I'd learned in business that accusations without proof are useless. So I documented everything, worked with my legal team, and built a case before confronting him. Some might say that's cold, calculating. Sarah met Amanda's eyes. Some might say it's smart. I wasn't going to give him a chance to destroy evidence or disappear. Gerald Hutchinson's cross-examination was aggressive. Ms. Chin, isn't it true that you earn over $50 million a year? That's approximately correct. And Mark earned what, as your husband? He didn't have formal employment. He managed some of our household investments. So he was financially dependent on you? He chose not to work. I never prevented him from pursuing a career. But you held the power in the relationship, didn't you? The money, the success, the control. I held the power I earned through my own work. And when Mark tried to be an equal partner, you saw it as a threat. When Mark tried to steal my company, I saw it as a crime. There's a difference between partnership and theft, Mr. Hutchinson. Several jurors nodded slightly. Ms. Chin, let's talk about the prenuptial agreement. You insisted Mark sign it before the wedding, correct? We both agreed it was prudent given the assets involved. But Mark had concerns about it. He felt it was one-sided. He had his own lawyer review it. He signed voluntarily. Or did he sign because you threatened to end the engagement if he didn't? That's a lie. Is it? We have an email from Mark to a friend saying exactly that. Amanda stood. Objection. That email was not provided in discovery. Judge Thompson frowned. Mr. Hutchinson? It's a recently recovered communication, Your Honor. We're providing it now. I'm going to allow it, but you're on thin ice, Counselor. Continue. Gerald projected the email on the screen. Sarah gave me an ultimatum today. Sign the prenup or the wedding is off. I feel trapped. I love her, but I'm signing away any right to what we build together. Sarah felt her chest tighten. She didn't remember any such conversation, but the email looked authentic. Ms. Chin, do you deny pressuring Mark to sign? I discussed the prenup with him, yes. It was a business decision. But I never threatened him. Yet he felt threatened. He felt controlled. And over 3 years of marriage, that feeling grew until he felt he had no choice but to try to claim what he believed was rightfully his. He wasn't claiming what was rightfully his. He was stealing what was mine. Or maybe, Gerald said softly, he was fighting back against a woman who had all the power and used it to crush anyone who challenged her. Objection. Amanda was on her feet. Counsel is testifying. Sustained. Jury will disregard. Mr. Hutchinson, ask questions, don't make speeches. But the damage was done. Sarah could see some jurors looking at her differently, wondering if maybe she was the problem. The trial continued for 3 more weeks. David Chen testified, crying on the stand, claiming Mark had manipulated him. I trusted him, David sobbed. He made it sound like we were saving the company, not destroying it. I was stupid and weak, and I'm so sorry. Mark himself testified in his own defense, portraying himself as a man who tried to love an impossible woman. I adored Sarah, he said, his voice catching. But she was married to her company, not to me. I felt invisible in my own marriage. Yes, I made mistakes with gambling. Yes, I should have handled the situation with Linda differently. But I'm not a criminal. I'm just a man who lost his way trying to matter to someone who didn't need him. It was a powerful performance. Sarah watched several jurors wipe their eyes. When both sides rested, closing arguments began. Amanda Foster gave a passionate summary of the evidence, the paper trail, the clear criminal intent. Gerald Hutchinson painted Mark as a tragic figure, a man destroyed by loving someone too powerful. Then the jury deliberated. For 4 days, Sarah waited. She couldn't work, couldn't sleep. She sat in her penthouse with her mother, watching the city lights and wondering if justice would prevail or if Mark's charm would win one more time. On the afternoon of the 4th day, her phone rang. It was Amanda. They have a verdict. We need to get to the courthouse. Sarah's hands shook as she helped her mother into the car. The courthouse was packed with media and spectators. Everyone wanted to see how this would end. Judge Thompson entered, and the jury filed in. Sarah tried to read their faces but couldn't. Madam Foreperson, has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, how do you find the defendant Mark Davis? Guilty. Sarah felt her mother squeeze her hand. On the charge of forgery? Guilty. On the charge of attempted embezzlement? Guilty. On the charge of assault? Guilty. With each guilty verdict, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The jury found Mark guilty on all charges. David Chen was found guilty on conspiracy and fraud charges, but acquitted of assault. Judge Thompson scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later, but remanded both defendants to custody immediately. As Mark was led away in handcuffs, he looked at Sarah one last time. There was no remorse in his eyes, only hatred. Sarah looked back steadily. She'd won. Not just the trial, but her life back. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Sarah made a brief statement. Justice has been served today. I hope this verdict sends a message that no one, regardless of charm, manipulation, or victim playing, is above the law. Thank you. That night, Sarah and her mother sat on the penthouse balcony, watching stars appear over Puget Sound. It's over, Linda said softly. Not quite. Sentencing is still coming. But yes, the worst is over. Are you okay, baby? Sarah thought about that question. Was she okay? She'd been betrayed, humiliated, forced to expose her entire life. She'd lost her husband, her cousin, her assistant. She'd spent months in legal battles and public scrutiny. But she was still standing. Her company was stronger than ever. Her mother was safe. And she'd learned who she really was. Not just a brilliant CEO, but a woman capable of fighting for what mattered. Yeah, Mom. I think I'm going to be okay. 2 weeks later, Sarah returned to the courthouse for sentencing. The media presence had diminished slightly, but the public interest remained high. This was the moment when Mark Davis and David Chen would learn their fate. Sarah arrived early with her mother and Elena. They sat in the same seats they'd occupied throughout the trial, but the atmosphere felt different now. The uncertainty was gone, replaced by a quiet anticipation. Mark was brought in first, wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hair disheveled, his face gaunt. Gone was the charming man who'd swept Sarah off her feet 4 years ago. In his place sat someone who looked defeated, angry, and small. David followed, looking even worse. He'd lost at least 20 pounds during the trial, and his eyes were hollow with regret. Judge Thompson entered, and the room rose. Please be seated. We are here today for sentencing in the matter of the state of Washington versus Mark Davis and David Chen. Before I impose sentences, I'm going to allow the victims to make impact statements if they wish. Ms. Chen, would you like to address the court? Sarah had prepared a statement, but as she stood and walked to the podium, she found herself setting aside her prepared remarks. Your Honor, 3 months ago, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I thought I understood loss and anger and grief. I was wrong. The depth of what these men did, the calculation, the manipulation, the willingness to hurt my mother, it's something I'm still processing. She looked directly at Mark. You didn't just steal from me financially. You stole time, trust, and peace of mind. You made me question my judgment, my worth, my ability to read people. You weaponized my love against me and thought you'd get away with it because I was too successful to seem vulnerable. Mark's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Sarah turned to David. And you knew what my mother sacrificed for our family. You ate at her table, accepted her love, and then participated in throwing her out like garbage. That's a betrayal that goes beyond business or money. That's a betrayal of everything that makes us human. Her voice softened. But here's what I've learned through this nightmare. Betrayal reveals truth. It shows you who people really are, but more importantly, it shows you who you are. I learned I'm stronger than I knew. I learned that justice, while slow, is possible. And I learned that my mother's love is worth more than any empire I could ever build. She returned to her seat, and Linda squeezed her hand. Mrs. Chen, Judge Thompson said, would you like to speak? Linda wheeled herself forward slowly. When she reached the microphone, she looked frail but unbroken. Your Honor, I'm 72 years old. I've lived through poverty, through losing my husband, through raising a child alone. I've faced challenges that would break most people. But I never, in all those years, experienced cruelty like what Mark Davis showed me that day. Her voice shook with emotion. He didn't just push me out of a house. He tried to erase me, to make me feel like my life had no value, like my years of sacrifice meant nothing. He looked at an old woman and saw only an obstacle to wealth. Linda looked at Mark directly. I forgive you, Mr. Davis. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying hatred would make me like you. But forgiveness doesn't mean there shouldn't be consequences. I hope you spend your time in prison thinking about what really matters in life, because it isn't money or power. It's how you treat people when they can't fight back. She wheeled back to her seat, and several people in the courtroom wiped their eyes. Judge Thompson turned to Mark. Mr. Davis, do you wish to make a statement before sentencing? Mark stood, and for a moment, Sarah thought he might apologize, might show some remorse. Instead, his expression hardened. Your Honor, I'm guilty of loving the wrong person. Sarah Chen is a brilliant businesswoman, but she's a terrible wife. She made me feel small every day of our marriage. Yes, I gambled. Yes, I made financial mistakes. But I was driven to it by a relationship where I had no value, no voice, no respect. Amanda Foster whispered to Sarah, he's not helping himself. Mark continued, his voice rising. I'm being punished because I dared to challenge a powerful woman. Because I tried to claim what was rightfully mine as her husband. This whole trial has been about protecting the wealthy while destroying those of us who try to rise above our station. Judge Thompson's expression grew colder. Mr. Davis, are you finished? I'm finished being lectured about morality by people who've never struggled, who've never had to. Sit down, Mr. Davis. The judge's voice cut through his speech like a knife. I've heard enough. Mark sat, his face flushed with anger. David Chin, do you wish to speak? David stood shakily. Your Honor, I have no excuses. What I did was wrong. I betrayed my cousin, my aunt, my family. I was weak and stupid and greedy. I know saying sorry isn't enough, but I am sorry. I'm deeply, horribly sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make amends, even though I know I never can. Judge Thompson nodded. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Please be seated. She opened a folder and reviewed her notes. The courtroom was silent, tension thick in the air. I've presided over many cases in my 20 years on the bench. Corporate fraud, embezzlement, domestic violence. But rarely have I seen a case that combined so many elements of calculated cruelty with shameless self-justification. She looked at Mark. Mr. Davis, you have shown no genuine remorse. Even now, you blame your victim for your choices. You refuse to acknowledge the harm you caused to an elderly woman who welcomed you into her family. Your actions were premeditated, sustained over 18 months, and designed to destroy the woman you claimed to love. Mark's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison. On the charge of forgery, 5 years, to run consecutively. On the charge of attempted embezzlement, 6 years, consecutive. On the charge of assault on an elderly person, 3 years, consecutive. Total sentence, 22 years in federal prison, with eligibility for parole after serving 65%. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Mark's face went white. Additionally, you are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $2.3 million to cover legal fees, therapy costs, and damages. You will have no contact with Sarah Chen or Linda Chen for the duration of your sentence and 10 years following your release. Judge Thompson turned to David. Mr. Chin, your case is somewhat different. While your actions were reprehensible, you showed genuine remorse and cooperated with authorities. However, you still betrayed family trust in the most profound way. David's eyes filled with tears. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, I sentence you to 4 years in federal prison. On the charge of fraud, 3 years, to run consecutively. Total sentence, 7 years, with eligibility for parole after serving 50%. You are also ordered to pay restitution of $500,000 and prohibited from contacting the victims. Judge Thompson set down her papers. Let me say this to everyone in this courtroom and to anyone who might face similar temptations. Betrayal of trust, especially trust within families, strikes at the foundation of civil society. When we cannot trust those closest to us, everything falls apart. The sentences I've imposed today reflect not just the financial crimes, but the profound human harm caused by these defendants. She looked at Sarah. Ms. Chin, I hope these sentences bring you some measure of peace. You showed remarkable courage in pursuing justice despite the personal cost. Thank you, Your Honor. As Mark and David were led away, Mark turned one final time to shout, "This isn't over, Sarah. I'll appeal. I'll." "Keep moving, Mr. Davis," the bailiff said, pushing him toward the door. Outside the courthouse, Sarah held a brief press conference. Reporters shouted questions over each other. "Ms. Chen, are you satisfied with the sentences?" Justice isn't about satisfaction. It's about accountability. "Yes, I believe the sentences are appropriate given the severity of the crimes." "What will you do now?" "Focus on what matters. My company, my mother, and building something positive from this experience." "Do you have any message for other women facing similar situations?" Sarah paused, choosing her words carefully. "Document everything. Trust your instincts. Don't let anyone gaslight you into doubting your reality. And remember that seeking justice isn't vindictive, it's necessary. Silence protects abusers. Speaking up protects future victims." "Will you ever trust anyone again?" Sarah smiled sadly. "I already trust people. I trust my mother, my true friends, my dedicated employees. I trust good people who've earned that trust through consistent actions, not just words. What I won't do is ignore red flags for the sake of appearing trusting or loving." That evening, Sarah and her mother held a small dinner at the penthouse. Elena came, along with Marcus and a few other close colleagues. It wasn't a celebration exactly. Too much pain had preceded this moment, but it was an acknowledgement that they'd survived. "A toast," Elena said, raising her glass. "To Sarah, who fought back. To Linda, who stood strong. And to justice, delayed but not denied." They clinked glasses, and Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. But that peace was interrupted by her phone ringing. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Ms. Chen? This is Detective Rachel Morrison with the Seattle Police Department Financial Crimes Unit. We need to speak with you urgently. There's been a development in your case." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What kind of development?" "We've discovered that Mark Davis wasn't working alone. There's evidence of a larger conspiracy involving several people we haven't identified yet. Can you come to the station tomorrow morning?" After hanging up, Sarah looked at her mother and Elena, who'd overheard the conversation. "It's not over," Sarah said quietly. "There are more people involved." Linda sighed. "Will this ever end?" "It will, Mom. I promise. But we have to see it through to the finish." Elena pulled out her laptop. "Let's start digging. If there are more conspirators, we need to know who they are before they know we're looking." As the night deepened over Seattle, Sarah returned to war mode. She'd thought the trial was the end, but it was just another chapter. And she would see this through, no matter how many battles it took. Because some fights weren't just about winning. They were about making sure no one could hurt you, or anyone you loved, ever again. The Seattle Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit occupied the third floor of a nondescript building in Capitol Hill. Sarah arrived at 8 a.m. with Elena and her head of security, James Park. Detective Rachel Morrison met them in a conference room filled with whiteboards covered in names, photos, and connecting lines. "Thank you for coming so quickly," Detective Morrison said. She was a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and graying hair pulled back in a tight bun. "What I'm about to show you goes far beyond Mark Davis's crimes." She clicked a remote, and a presentation appeared on the screen. After Mark's arrest, we continued investigating his financial transactions. We found something unusual: regular payments from a shell corporation called Titan Strategies LLC. These payments started 2 years ago, long before Mark escalated his scheme against you. Sarah leaned forward. "Titan Strategies? I've never heard of it." Neither had we. It took weeks to penetrate the layers of protection, but we finally identified the owner. Detective Morrison clicked again, and a photo appeared. Sarah's breath caught. "Richard Blackwood." Elena gasped. "Your competitor." Richard Blackwood was the CEO of Nexus Technologies, Quantum Solutions' primary rival. He'd been in the industry for 20 years, building a reputation as a ruthless businessman who destroyed competitors through any means necessary. Sarah had competed against him for contracts, talent, and market share for years. "Blackwood has been funding Mark's activities for 2 years?" Sarah asked. "Why?" "That's what we're trying to determine. But there's more." Detective Morrison clicked through more slides. We found communications between Blackwood and Mark discussing Project Downfall. The goal was to destabilize Quantum Solutions from within, drive down your stock price, and position Nexus to acquire the company at a fraction of its value. Sarah felt sick. Mark wasn't just stealing from me for himself. He was working for my competitor. It appears so. Mark's gambling debts? Many of them were fabricated to create a cover story. Blackwood was paying him to sabotage your company. The real goal was corporate espionage on a massive scale. Elena pulled out her laptop and started typing furiously. "If this is true, there should be traces in our systems. Let me check recent security breaches." Detective Morrison nodded. "We need your cooperation to build a case against Blackwood. It's going to require going through years of financial records, emails, and corporate documents. Are you willing to do that?" "Absolutely. What do you need from me?" For the next 3 hours, they reviewed evidence. The trail was sophisticated but visible once you knew where to look. Blackwood had been playing a long game, positioning Mark as a sleeper agent in Sarah's life. The marriage itself might have been part of the plan. Sarah felt nauseous at the thought. How long had Mark known Blackwood before we met? Detective Morrison pulled up another document. They first made contact 6 months before you and Mark met at that tech conference. We have emails showing Blackwood encouraging Mark to develop a relationship with the Chen woman. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. "The entire relationship was a setup?" "We don't know if Mark entered the relationship with malicious intent," Detective Morrison said gently. "It's possible Blackwood recruited him after you were already together. But the timeline is suspicious." Elena had been working silently on her laptop. Now she looked up, her face pale. "Sarah, I found something. There have been data breaches at Quantum over the past 18 months. Small ones, easy to miss. Someone's been copying proprietary code, client lists, and strategic plans. The breaches originated from your home network." "Mark had access to my home office sometimes," Sarah said. "I thought I could trust him." "He was probably using your credentials to access company servers remotely," Elena said. "Sarah, if Nexus has our proprietary technology, they could develop competing products before we even launch. This could devastate Quantum." Sarah stood and walked to the window. Below, Seattle went about its business, people unaware that in this conference room, a conspiracy was being unraveled that could change the entire tech industry. "What's our next move?" Sarah asked. "We need to gather more evidence before approaching Blackwood," Detective Morrison said. "If we move too soon, he'll destroy everything and claim ignorance. We need ironclad proof of his involvement." "How long will that take?" "Weeks, maybe months." Sarah turned back. "I don't have months. If Nexus is preparing to launch products based on stolen quantum technology, they could do irreparable damage to my company. I need to act now. Ms. Chen, I understand your urgency, but..." "Detective, I appreciate everything you're doing. But I'm not going to sit back and let Richard Blackwood destroy what I've built. I'm going to confront him." "That's a bad idea," Detective Morrison said. "If you tip him off..." "I'm not going to tip him off. I'm going to make him think he's won. And then I'm going to take him down." Elena looked at her friend. "Sarah, what are you planning?" Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm going to give Richard Blackwood exactly what he wants." 2 days later, news broke that shocked the tech world. Sarah Chen was stepping down as CEO of Quantum Solutions due to personal stress and family considerations. The announcement sent Quantum's stock price plummeting. Within hours, Richard Blackwood called for an emergency meeting with Quantum's board, offering to acquire the company for $1.2 billion, less than half its value before the scandal. "It's a generous offer given current circumstances," Blackwood said during a televised interview. "Quantum Solutions is a great company that's been damaged by internal turmoil. Nexus can provide the stability and leadership it needs." What Blackwood didn't know was that Sarah's resignation was fake. She'd coordinated with trusted board members to create an elaborate deception. Every document, every press release, every panicked board meeting was theater designed to lure Blackwood into making a fatal mistake. "He'll move fast," Sarah told her inner circle during a secret meeting at her penthouse. "He's waited 2 years for this moment. His arrogance won't let him be cautious." Elena looked worried. "Sarah, if this doesn't work, you'll have tanked your own company's value. The damage could be irreversible." "It'll work. I know Richard Blackwood. He's brilliant but predictable. He thinks he's the smartest person in any room. That's his weakness." Marcus pulled up financial models. "If we're right, Blackwood will try to acquire Quantum through a hostile takeover. He'll need to move money, lots of it, quickly. That's when he'll get sloppy. And that's when we catch him," Sarah finished. The plan was risky, perhaps the riskiest thing Sarah had ever done. But she was tired of playing defense. It was time to go on offense. Over the next week, Sarah played her role perfectly. She gave a tearful interview about needing to step back for her mental health. She was photographed looking exhausted and defeated. Social media buzzed with sympathy and speculation. Meanwhile, Blackwood moved exactly as predicted. Nexus Technologies announced a formal acquisition offer for Quantum Solutions. The offer was contingent on a quick closing, within 30 days. "He's nervous," Elena observed. "He wants this done before anyone looks too closely." "Let him be nervous. It'll make him more aggressive." Detective Morrison had been monitoring Blackwood's communications with a court-ordered warrant. He's transferring massive amounts of money from offshore accounts. He's also communicating with someone inside Quantum. We haven't identified who yet. "Another mole?" Sarah asked. "Possibly. We're working on it." Sarah reviewed Quantum's employee roster, looking for anyone with both access and motive. Then it hit her. Thomas Reynolds. "My CFO." Elena looked skeptical. "Thomas? He's been with the company for 5 years. He's one of your most trusted executives." "Exactly. He'd have access to everything Blackwood would need, financial records, projections, board deliberations. And he's been unusually quiet during this crisis. Most executives are fighting the acquisition. Thomas has been neutral. Marcus ran background checks. Sarah, Thomas has a brother who works at Nexus Technologies. John Reynolds, VP of Strategic Acquisitions. Brothers in rival companies, Sarah mused. That's not illegal, but it's convenient. Should we bring this to Detective Morrison? Elena asked. Not yet. Let's see if Thomas makes a move first. Sarah called an emergency board meeting to discuss the Nexus acquisition offer. She made sure Thomas was present and that he knew the meeting would cover sensitive financial information that could impact the decision. During the meeting, Sarah deliberately shared false information. Our legal team has discovered that some of the stolen technology Mark took was actually incomplete. Nexus won't be able to replicate our core products without the final algorithms, which are stored in an encrypted file only I can access. She watched Thomas carefully. His expression remained neutral, but his hand moved to his phone under the table. After the meeting, Marcus confirmed. Thomas sent a text immediately after you mentioned the encrypted file. It went to an unknown number. Trace it. Within hours, they had confirmation. The number belonged to Richard Blackwood's personal cell phone. We've got him, Sarah said. Thomas is feeding information directly to Blackwood. Detective Morrison obtained a warrant to monitor Thomas's communications. Over the next few days, they recorded multiple conversations between Thomas and Blackwood discussing insider information, acquisition strategies, and how to pressure remaining board members. But Sarah needed more. She needed proof that Blackwood had orchestrated the entire conspiracy from the beginning, that Mark had been his agent, that the theft of technology was intentional corporate espionage. She set one final trap. Sarah scheduled a private meeting with Thomas. I need to discuss something confidential, she said. The board is considering a counteroffer, but I need your financial expertise to make it work. Thomas arrived at her office that evening. Sarah had the room wired for audio and video, with Detective Morrison and her team listening from a van outside. Thomas, thank you for coming. I know this has been a difficult time. Of course, Sarah. Whatever you need. I need complete honesty. Can you give me that? Thomas shifted uncomfortably. I don't understand. I think you do. I've reviewed our financial records very carefully. There are irregularities, small transfers, information leaks, data accessed at unusual times. All of it traces back to your department. Thomas's face went pale. Sarah, I can explain. Please do. Because right now, it looks like you've been working with Richard Blackwood to destroy my company. That's not. I wasn't trying to destroy anything. Richard approached me 6 months ago. He said Quantum was going to fail anyway because of Mark's schemes. He said I could either go down with the ship or help facilitate a transition that would save jobs, save the company. And make you rich in the process? Thomas looked down. He offered me a position at Nexus. Double my salary. VP of Financial Operations. I have 2 kids in college, Sarah. My wife has medical bills. I saw an opportunity. So you betrayed me. You gave him confidential information. You helped coordinate the acquisition attempt. I thought I was helping. You were going to lose Quantum anyway. At least this way, the company would survive under new leadership. Did you know about Mark? About his relationship with Blackwood? Thomas hesitated. Not at first. I found out about 6 months ago when Richard mentioned that he'd had an asset close to you for some time. He never said Mark's name, but I figured it out. And you didn't tell me? I was already in too deep. If I'd told you, I would have implicated myself. Sarah leaned back. Thomas, do you understand what you've done? You haven't just betrayed me. You've committed corporate espionage, fraud, and conspiracy. You're going to prison. What? No, Sarah, please. I made a mistake, but it wasn't a mistake. It was a series of calculated decisions over months. You chose money over integrity. You chose Richard Blackwood over the woman who gave you a chance when no other company would. Thomas's eyes widened. You knew about my past? Of course I knew. You had a bankruptcy in your background. Other companies wouldn't touch you. I gave you a second chance because I believed in redemption. And this is how you repaid me. Detective Morrison entered the room with two officers. Thomas Reynolds, you're under arrest for corporate espionage, fraud, and conspiracy. As they handcuffed Thomas, he looked at Sarah desperately. Please, Sarah. My family. Your family will suffer because of choices you made. Not choices I made. You did this, Thomas. You. After Thomas was taken away, Sarah sat alone in her office. Elena entered quietly. You okay? I'm tired, Elena. So tired. How many more people am I going to have to expose? Just one more. Blackwood. And then it's over. Is it? Or is there always going to be someone else trying to take what I've built? Elena sat beside her. Maybe. But the difference is, now you know you can fight back. Now you know you're strong enough to win. Sarah managed a small smile. When did you become so wise? I've been learning from the best. The next morning, armed with Thomas's confession and months of Detective Morrison's evidence, federal prosecutors filed charges against Richard Blackwood. Conspiracy to commit corporate espionage, wire fraud, racketeering, and attempted theft of trade secrets. The FBI raided Nexus Technologies' headquarters at dawn. Agents seized servers, documents, and arrested Blackwood in front of his entire staff. The tech world exploded with the news. Headlines screamed, Nexus CEO arrested in multi-year conspiracy against quantum solutions, and Richard Blackwood accused of orchestrating corporate espionage through Sarah Chen's husband. Sarah held a press conference that afternoon, standing confidently in a red power suit. For 2 years, Richard Blackwood orchestrated an elaborate scheme to destroy quantum solutions from within. He recruited my former husband, planted moles in my company, stole our technology, and attempted a hostile takeover based on artificial crisis he created. But he underestimated something fundamental: the strength of people who refuse to be victims. Cameras flashed as reporters shouted questions. Ms. Chin, are you returning as CEO? I never actually left. My resignation was strategic, designed to lure Mr. Blackwood into exposing himself. I will continue leading quantum solutions, and we will emerge from this stronger than ever. What about the stolen technology? Nexus has nothing that works. The code Mark stole was deliberately incomplete. The real algorithms were always secure. Any products Nexus might have developed based on stolen data are useless. Do you feel vindicated? Sarah paused. I feel exhausted, relieved, and determined. Vindication is a luxury. Justice is a necessity. Today, justice is being served. Within days, Quantum's stock price recovered and then surged to record highs. Investors saw Sarah's strategic brilliance in setting the trap, her resilience in fighting back, and the strength of a company that could withstand such sustained attack. Clients who'd been nervous recommitted. New contracts poured in. The tech press published glowing profiles about Sarah's tactical genius. But Richard Blackwood wasn't going quietly. From his attorney came a statement: Mr. Blackwood maintains his innocence. This is a vindictive prosecution by a woman who cannot accept legitimate business competition. Sarah read the statement and laughed bitterly. Even now, he's trying to make this about me being a woman. As if male CEOs would just accept corporate espionage and smile about it. The trial was scheduled for 6 months later. In the meantime, Sarah had work to do, rebuilding trust, strengthening security, and finally focusing on what she loved: building technology that changed lives. One evening, she sat with her mother on the penthouse balcony, watching the sunset over Puget Sound. Are you happy, baby? Linda asked. Sarah considered the question. Happy? I don't know. But I'm at peace. I know who I am now. I know what I'm capable of. And I know that I'll never let anyone make me feel small again. Your father would be so proud. You think so? I know so. He always said the measure of a person isn't avoiding failure, it's how you rise after falling. Sarah squeezed her mother's hand. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry you got hurt in all this. I'm not sorry. If being hurt was the price of seeing you find your strength, I'd pay it again. They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to purple to deep blue. Behind them, the city glittered with life, with possibility, with hope. Sarah's phone buzzed. A message from Elena. The Grace Initiative just received its largest donation ever, $10 million from an anonymous donor. The note says, for mothers everywhere who sacrifice everything for their children's dreams. Sarah smiled, tears pricking her eyes. Maybe vindication was a luxury, but gratitude wasn't. And tonight, she was grateful for everything. The pain, the lessons, the love, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter that no amount of money, power, or betrayal could ever destroy. 6 months later, the federal courthouse in Seattle was packed for what had become known as the trial of the decade. Richard Blackwood's case had captivated the nation, a story of corporate warfare, betrayal, and one woman's refusal to be destroyed. Sarah arrived early, as she always did. She wore a cream-colored suit, her hair pulled back simply, minimal jewelry. She'd learned over the past year that true power didn't need decoration. It simply existed. Her mother sat beside her, healthier now, her eyes bright with determination. Elena was there, along with Marcus and several Quantum employees who'd remained loyal throughout the crisis. Richard Blackwood entered, looking far different from the confident CEO who'd once dominated tech conferences. He was thinner, grayer, his expensive suit hanging loose on his frame. Prison awaiting trial had not been kind to him. The prosecution, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Walsh, had spent months building an overwhelming case. They had Thomas Reynolds's testimony. They had Mark Davis's testimony, given in exchange for a reduced sentence. They had financial records, emails, recorded phone calls, and testimony from former Nexus employees who'd participated in the scheme. Blackwood's defense was simple. Deny everything, claim all communications were taken out of context, and paint Sarah as a vindictive competitor manufacturing a conspiracy that didn't exist. The trial lasted 4 weeks. Sarah testified for 2 full days, walking the jury through the timeline, the evidence, the pattern of attacks on her company. She was calm, factual, and devastating. During cross-examination, Blackwood's attorney, Martin Chase, tried to rattle her. Ms. Chen, isn't it true that you've harbored resentment toward Mr. Blackwood for years because Nexus beat Quantum for several major contracts? Nexus won those contracts fairly. I don't resent legitimate competition. But you do resent Mr. Blackwood personally, don't you? I resent anyone who tries to destroy what I've built through illegal means. That's not personal. It's professional. You admit you set up this entire scenario to trap Mr. Blackwood. Faking your resignation, tanking your own stock price, deliberately misleading your board. Some might call that manipulation. Some might call it smart strategy. When someone attacks you, Mr. Chase, you can either hide or you can fight back with every resource you have. I chose to fight. By any means necessary. By legal means. Everything I did was within the bounds of the law. Can your client say the same? The courtroom rippled with murmurs. When Mark Davis took the stand, Sarah saw him for the first time since sentencing. He looked broken, institutionalized already despite serving less than a year. Mr. Davis, Prosecutor Walsh began, tell the jury about your relationship with Richard Blackwood. Mark's voice was quiet, defeated. I met Richard about 4 years ago at a private poker game. I was in debt, desperate. He said he could help me, but I'd need to do something for him first. What did he want? He wanted me to get close to Sarah Chen. To develop a relationship with her. He said if I could marry her and gain her trust, he'd pay off my debts and give me a cut of profits when Nexus eventually acquired Quantum. The jury looked shocked. Several members leaned forward. So your entire relationship with Ms. Chen was based on fraud? Mark hesitated. At first, yes. But then, I did fall in love with her. Or I thought I did. Richard kept pushing me to go further, to steal more, to hurt her more. By the time I realized what I'd become, I was in too deep. Did Mr. Blackwood specifically instruct you to obtain Ms. Chen's proprietary technology? Yes. He gave me devices to copy data, taught me how to access her systems remotely. He reviewed everything I stole and used it to develop competing products. Did he instruct you to involve David Chen? Yes. He said having her cousin on board would make the takeover more believable, more complete. And the incident with Linda Chen? Throwing an elderly woman out into the rain. Mark's voice broke. Richard said she was the biggest obstacle. That she was too smart, too protective. He said I needed to neutralize her. I'm not proud of what I did. But yes, Richard told me to get rid of her however I could. Blackwood's face reddened with rage. He leaned toward his attorney, whispering furiously. The defense's strategy fell apart under the weight of evidence. They tried to discredit Mark as a convicted felon seeking a reduced sentence. They tried to paint Thomas Reynolds as a disgruntled employee. They suggested the FBI had manufactured evidence. Nothing worked. The jury deliberated for only 6 hours. On the charge of conspiracy to commit corporate espionage, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. On the charge of wire fraud? Guilty. On the charge of racketeering? Guilty. On the charge of attempted theft of trade secrets? Guilty. Blackwood's face remained impassive, but Sarah saw his hands trembling. For the first time, the man who tried to destroy her looked genuinely afraid. Judge Thomas Harrison scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. In the interim, Sarah focused on Quantum. The publicity from the trial had been incredible. Free advertising worth millions. The company's reputation for resilience and Sarah's personal brand as a fighter had attracted new clients, new talent, and new opportunities. The Grace Initiative, her father's secret charity, was now public and expanding across the country. Every month, they provided technology training and resources to underserved communities, particularly programs focused on mothers re-entering the workforce. Your father would love this, Linda said during one of the initiative's opening ceremonies in Detroit. Taking something painful and turning it into something beautiful. Sarah hugged her mother. He'd love that you're healthy and safe. Everything else is just details. On sentencing day, Sarah returned to the courthouse one final time. Richard Blackwood stood before Judge Harrison, looking smaller than Sarah remembered. Mr. Blackwood, the judge began, I've reviewed the evidence, the jury's verdict, and the impact statements. Your crimes represent a profound betrayal of business ethics and a sustained assault on a competitor through illegal means. You corrupted individuals, stole technology, and orchestrated a conspiracy that spanned years. Blackwood's attorney tried to interject, but the judge silenced him with a look. Your actions weren't just crimes against Sarah Chen or Quantum Solutions. They were crimes against fair competition, against the free market principles that drive innovation, and against basic human decency. Judge Harrison delivered the sentence. 25 years in federal prison, $50 million in restitution to Quantum Solutions, forfeiture of all assets connected to the conspiracy, and permanent prohibition from serving as an officer or director of any publicly traded company. Blackwood's legs nearly gave out. His attorneys caught him. Additionally, the judge continued, I'm ordering the dissolution of several shell corporations used in this scheme and referring related cases to state prosecutors for additional charges. As Blackwood was led away, he looked at Sarah one final time. Unlike Mark's hatred or David's regret, Blackwood's expression showed only disbelief, as if he couldn't comprehend that he'd lost. Outside the courthouse, Sarah addressed the media for the last time. Today marks the end of a dark chapter and the beginning of a brighter future. I want to thank everyone who supported me, believed in me, and refused to let lies become truth. To other women and men facing similar challenges, document everything, trust your instincts, and never underestimate your own strength. Justice is possible, but you have to fight for it. What's next for you, Ms. Chen? A reporter called out. Sarah smiled. I'm going to run my company, spend time with my mother, and help other entrepreneurs avoid the traps I fell into. I'm also writing a book about corporate security and personal resilience. Will you ever trust anyone romantically again? Sarah paused. I hope so. But I'll be smarter about it. I'll look for character, not charm. Consistency, not excitement. And I'll never ever ignore red flags for the sake of being in love. That evening, Quantum Solutions held a celebration at their headquarters. The entire company gathered, hundreds of employees who'd weathered the storm together. Sarah stood on the stage, looking out at faces that had become family. A year ago, we were under attack. Our company was being stolen from within, our technology compromised, our reputation damaged. Today, we're stronger than ever. We've doubled our client base, expanded into new markets, and launched products that are changing lives. Applause erupted. But more importantly, we learned what we're made of. We learned that Quantum Solutions isn't just about software or profits. It's about people who refuse to quit, who protect each other, who fight for what's right even when it's hard. She spotted her mother in the crowd, Elena beside her, both beaming with pride. I started this company in a garage with nothing but an idea and determination. I've lost partners, friends, people I thought I could trust. But I've gained something more valuable, knowledge of my own strength. And that's something no one can ever take away. More applause, louder now. So here's to the future. Here's to building something that lasts. Here's to protecting what matters. And here's to every single person in this room who chose loyalty over easy money, truth over comfortable lies, and integrity over everything else. The room erupted in cheers. Music started playing. People hugged, laughed, and celebrated a victory that was about so much more than business. Later, Sarah stood on the rooftop terrace of Quantum headquarters with her mother, looking out over Seattle's glittering skyline. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd never found out? Linda asked. If Mark had succeeded? Sometimes. But I think the truth always finds a way out. Maybe it would have taken longer, hurt more. But eventually, I would have discovered who he really was. I'm proud of you, baby. Not for winning, but for fighting. For refusing to be a victim. Sarah leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Mom. You're the strongest person I know. We're both strong. We come from a line of strong women. Your grandmother, your great-grandmother, all of them survived impossible things. We carry that strength in our bones. A text buzzed on Sarah's phone. It was from Elena. Just got word that 3 former Nexus employees want to join Quantum. Apparently, they've been waiting for Blackwood to fall so they could work for a CEO with integrity. Want me to schedule interviews? Sarah smiled and typed back. Absolutely. Let's build something even better. She pocketed her phone and looked at the city below. Somewhere out there were other women facing betrayal, fighting battles, wondering if they were strong enough to survive. She hoped her story reached them. She hoped they knew that survival wasn't just possible. It was guaranteed if you refused to give up. What are you thinking about? Linda asked. I'm thinking about tomorrow. About all the tomorrows. About building something so strong that no one can ever tear it down. That's my girl. They stood together in comfortable silence as the city lights twinkled like stars. Behind them, the party continued. Music, laughter, celebration. But up here, it was just a mother and daughter, survivors and warriors, looking toward a future they'd fought to protect. Sarah thought about her father's letter, his words about legacy not being what you leave for your children, but what you leave in them. He'd left her strength, resilience, and an unshakable belief that doing the right thing mattered more than doing the easy thing. She'd taken those gifts and turned them into armor. She'd survived betrayal, manipulation, corporate warfare, and public scrutiny. She'd lost love but found herself. She'd been torn down but built herself back stronger. And most importantly, she'd learned that true power didn't come from never falling. It came from rising every single time you did. Ready to go home? Linda asked. Sarah took one last look at the skyline, at the company she'd built, at the future she'd reclaimed. Yeah, Mom. Let's go home. As they left the rooftop, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in over a year. Genuine peace. Not the absence of problems, but the confidence that whatever came next, she could handle it. Because she wasn't just a billionaire CEO anymore. She wasn't just a daughter or a survivor or a fighter. She was all of those things and more. She was a woman who'd faced the worst and emerged victorious. A woman who'd been betrayed by love but refused to stop believing in goodness. A woman who'd lost everything that wasn't real and kept everything that mattered. And that, Sarah realized as she drove home through Seattle's glowing streets, was the greatest victory of all. The end. And that's the end of Sarah's incredible journey. From betrayal to justice, from victim to victor, she never gave up. Did you enjoy this story? Smash that like button, subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories, and comment below with your favorite moment from this 10-chapter series. Have you learned anything from Sarah's story? What would you have done differently? Let's discuss. Share this video with anyone who needs inspiration to fight back against injustice. Remember, you're stronger than you think, and your story isn't over until you say it is. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.